Okay, so good. I'm excited to be here with you guys today. We have a really interesting topic that I think a lot of people I know who couldn't be on this call definitely wanted to, were interested in it. And I have some new faces here, so that's super fun to meet some new people. And then I have people that I've known for quite a while as well. So this is great. This is the Facebook group for the Leadership and Corporate Coaching Facebook group, and we're growing, which has been absolutely amazing. A lot of people joining. I'm not sure how they're finding us, but they are. So we're going to hopefully expand the discussion. And for those who I haven't met yet, my name is Jen Barley, and I have just a little bit of background about me as I've been coaching since 2007. I did start out more in the life realm and worked with people one-on-one, and then I would say in the last 2 years have maybe even a little bit longer, about 2.5 years, really been focused on corporate and leadership coaching. So I sort of feel like I have the gamut, and I've learned a lot being in corporate coaching and working with leaders and what they expect, and that sort of brings us to our conversation today. So here's what I'd like to do. I'll just sort of set the framework. We're going to talk about what's called pure coaching. I'm putting that in quotes. How does that show up in leadership and corporate coaching? Do we ever go away from coaching and add more of a mentoring or consulting kind of methodology with it? What do corporations want? What do they expect? And then also talking about programs and how that all works together. So I think for the benefit of everybody, let's just do a quick little introduction. If you just want to say what your name is and where you're from is always fun. And what's your experience with leadership coaching? It could be anything from just learning about it to been doing it for 20 years. We'll keep it short and sweet, but this way we kind of get to know each other. And I'm going to put you on the spot, Barbara. I unmuted you. Whoops, you just unmuted yourself. I keep doing it. Okay, you're up, Barbara. Do an introduction.
Yes. Hi, Barbara Alexander. I am from Freehold, New Jersey. And my experience in leadership coaching, I'd say, has been informally working on the corporate side for 25 years. And then for the last 5 years or so, I've been in the coaching realm, coaching entrepreneurs. So I'm looking to expand more back into my corporate coaching background as well.
Excellent. Very good. All right, Lenny, you're up.
Yeah, so I'm Lenny. I'm in the Denver area. I'm looking outside here to our first snowstorm of the year. It's been so dry here and in the 60s, and then we finally got some much needed moisture. My coaching experience, I came into coaching through Agile software development. I was an Agile coach internally for corporations for a while, worked my way up to actually an enterprise level coach where I did a lot of leadership coaching. And then a year ago, I decided I could do more damage if I worked from the outside in rather than from the inside out. So January 1st of last year, I stepped out on my own to start my own coaching business. And this year here, I'm making a slight shift. I'm taking that coaching experience and adding some alternative pieces to it. For instance, walk and talks in nature with leaders. So I call that program The Nature of Leadership.
I love it. You know, it's funny, Lenny, that's right, because I think I saw you on a thread where somebody was talking about the prescription of nature, right? So being out in nature and you had mentioned something about that. And then I read an article about the concept of we either grow or die and how that ties into nature. Maybe actually was, I'm not sure where I read it. Anyway, you've been on my mind with the whole nature thing. So Denver is probably, or Colorado is probably beautiful to do that in. Good.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. And let's go with Neelam. You want to go ahead and I'll have you guys unmute yourself because when I try to do it, I end up muting you. So Neelam, you're up.
All right, so I'm Neelam Sharma, and my experience is quite similar to Barbara in that I worked in corporate for, longer than I care to admit. And I did some informal coaching before I was certified and before I really knew more about what coaching was. And then I went out on my own. December 2013 is when I quit. And then I've been a coach for about 3 years. And I really focus on the middle layer of leaders who are quite neglected, I believe. That first level supervisors, the first time that they've ever managed anybody. I have also ended up with working with clients who have been managing for a while, but now are managing a group different than they've ever managed before, and in many different ways. And I'm in Atlanta, well, the suburbs of Atlanta.
Excellent. Good. I know you just made me think of something, Neelam, that we'll have this as part of our conversation. Do different levels in the organization require something different? So I put that down as something we can discuss. All right. Fantastic. Linda, you are up. Are you there, Linda? Oh, no, hold on one sec. Let me see if I can. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. It's a new headset, so I'm not sure I have it all figured out yet. So I was an organization development consultant for a number of years, and then an internal executive coach for about 7 years. And then 2002, I switched over to be an external consultant. So I've been coaching for 20 some years, and mostly executive coaching and team development. I really haven't done any group coaching, so to speak. So I'm really interested in kind of branching out into that just for something new and different to do. And I think it's a great way to leverage the costs, because I think companies are getting tighter and tighter on the executive coaching. So.
Perfect. All right. Excellent, Linda.
And I live in Florham Park, New Jersey.
Oh, okay. Great. Good. All right. I'm going to go ahead and mute you right now. The sound quality on your new headset is okay. It's not great. I'm just going to tell you that as you're testing it. Linda, I'm going to throw a question to you that I don't want you to answer yet, but came up to me when you were talking is, how do you as a coach show up differently as an external coach than when you're an internal coach? Okay, so be thinking about that. And let's move on over to Liz. Liz, why don't you do a quick introduction?
Yeah, hi there. So I'm English, as you can probably hear from the accent, but actually I live in Bergamo in northern Italy. So I'm feeling a little bit like I'm sitting on the fence. I've been in corporate for a very long time, over 25 years in the business management side, so marketing, sales, that kind of thing. And I've been doing informal coaching, and this year I'm going to move into actually doing some coaching as a business. So I'm going to get off the fence and pluck up the courage to really do it.
Excellent. Okay, good. All right, Yvette, you're up.
Hi, I'm in the Denver area. Hi, Lenny. And much like Barbara, my career, I did a lot of coaching, mentoring, developing when I was in corporate, and have branched out and starting my own coaching business last year. And so I'm looking to really just getting started out on my own in this, and looking for some of my first clients.
Excellent. Good. Excellent. And there's Leanne. Hey, Leanne.
Hi there. Hi. So I am Leanne Wild. I live in Charlottesville in Virginia. I'm British, and I will be returning to England in the summer. I am a lawyer by trained profession, and I work with lawyers and client service professionals. I call myself a leadership and performance coach. I don't consider myself an executive coach, but I quite like, I'm always intrigued by Jen and Karen's niche of non-traditional leadership coaching, and that's where I see myself fitting in. And I really enjoy coaching at the intersection of someone's professional and personal life, because in my opinion, to coach with heart and backbone needs to involve both. And I'm in my first year of coaching.
Excellent. All right, perfect. All right, Erica, you're up.
Hi, everybody. Let's see. Can you hear me? I don't know. Okay. So I am been coaching for a few years and am new to the corporate and leadership coaching realm. And my entry point into that is through doing training, communication skills and leadership training skills based programs based on improvisational theater and principles from that. So that's been my access point into that, and the coaching part would be secondary. Like, I have a coaching business is more one-on-one and group and not related to the corporate thing at this point.
Perfect.
That's it. And I'm in Ithaca, New York.
Okay, good. We also have Deb on the call who doesn't have access to sort of the technology part of speaking or the video, which is fine. So I just typed her a little message, and basically she says that she has that her role, she actually loves her job. She loves weaving and coaching. She has been training for Enterprise Holdings, which is National Alamo Rental Cars, been training for about 19 years. She loves the people that she gets to develop. She went through the IPEC program, and she just has been weaving coaching into her leadership development program. So that's a little bit about Deb's background as well. So let's just jump into it. So the whole conversation kind of got started around the concept of peer coaching. So when I am just solely coaching a one-on-one person about their life, I follow the ICF core competencies. I no longer tell people what to do. I, in theory, have stopped fixing people. I say this because we all can fall back into habits. And I really stay in a peer coaching methodology that I feel is very supportive of the ICF core competencies and what they constitute as coaching. In my leadership and my corporate work, I notice I get much more questions about, do you think that was okay? What are your thoughts? How would you approach X, Y, and Z? And so some of the peer coaching has felt like, is there really truly a blending of advice giving or more directive or telling people? So I thought that would be really good to be able to sort of hear what you guys have experienced. So I want to actually go to the question that I asked Linda. So Linda said that she was an internal coach for a long time and then became an external coach. Linda, what differences between those two roles have you noticed in your own coaching style?
I'm not sure that there's been that much difference. Is my volume better? I put my microphone closer. Good. Okay. So I'm not sure there's been too much difference because when I was an internal coach, I really was set aside in an organization. It was in the HR organization, but the way it was structured, I really did have a lot of objectivity, and people felt like I was this resource that was safe. I wasn't an HR business partner. I wasn't attached to any HR group like that. So I'm not sure I felt that much different, except more credibility as an external executive coach. Just as external consultants have more credibility than internal people, which is just so not right, but kind of the life,
Yep. Let me ask this. Do you feel that your clients share more with you as an external coach than they were when you were an internal coach?
Maybe slightly, but not dramatically, just because I think the way that internal coaching role was set up.
Okay.
But I think in general that would be the case.
Okay. Yeah, just interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw this out to the larger group then, to everybody. So what's been your experience? Have you stayed pure coaching, or have you ventured off and sort of combined different methodologies? What works, what doesn't? I'm going to throw out, I'm going to stack a bunch of questions. So pick any one that sounds good, right? What do you find tough about staying with a coaching hat on? Perhaps where do you wish you could tighten things up from your own perspective and do things differently? What runs through your head as you think about this? And Brenda, I know you do a lot of, you didn't do an introduction, you popped away for a while and now you're back. I know that you do a lot of leadership coaching, different levels within the organization. So I'll just throw it to you first. What do you think about the peer coaching model as it applies to corporate?
Well, I think sometimes people get stuck in certain circumstances, and when you're within an organization like an internal coach, you actually understand some of the internal politics and maneuvering that has to take place in order for people to be successful. And I think as an internal coach, we may be less likely to stay in a pure coaching form because we have that sort of inside knowledge. But going into an organization as an external coach, it's usually established for me sort of up front what they're looking for me to do. So if I'm just doing leader coaching, helping them to personally grow, I stay pretty close to a pure coaching. And that's one of the questions that I have is, what do we actually mean when we say pure coaching? That's a little confusing. But in my own definition of that, I think I stay pretty true to that, unless it is that the organization is asking me to come in and do a workshop with a team or coach a team. And in that case, you tend to, create a program, so to speak, to move the group forward. So that's been my experience.
Okay, good. And yes, I think you had flipped off when we were, well, you didn't flip off.
No.
You were making hand gestures. However, you left for a moment to, and pure coaching is about purely being accordance with the ICF guidelines, truly partnering with the client, not giving advice, not telling them what to do. Truthfully, not even recommending a book just because we have the book we want to recommend, right? So the pure coaching. So that was a question that came up in the Facebook group. Liz St. Jean had asked, well, how does that really work? Like with even the core competency number 10 of, recommending books or recommending resources. Pure coaching is what would support you? Where can you find the resources that you need? If you had the ideal resource, what would that look like as opposed to here are 3 books, pick one? So,
yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. Yep.
Who else? What has been your experience or thoughts?
I'll chime in. I'm actually working with several different people from very different walks of life. One of which is a former colleague, and I'm aware of and familiar with what she does and how she does it. So I have that. I'm external, but I have an understanding of what she does. And then, another client, I don't really know anything about what she does in terms of her work. So what I'm finding is those that know that I know more about what they do, they like you were saying, ask more, well, what do you think? You know how this works. What would you do? And so I do get solicited of that. My perception is, and I'd love comments on this, is that when you're working with corporate people, there's an expectation of get stuff done, right? Move forward, move forward, move forward. And that the pure coaching model can feel arduously slow at times. And that the people that I've worked with from a corporate perspective or have that background tend to want things to move more quickly. And then my clients that, I'm not as familiar with what they do, or they're not as familiar with coaching, seem to be very much more open to the drawing out process of true coaching. Is so far my experience.
Okay. So let's throw that back out to the group. What do you guys think? So in terms of the action focus, right? And then also the asking what you would do.
I agree with Yvette. Everything you said just sounds right on target from what I've experienced. One of the things that one coach told me that she uses as a concept, and I really liked it, it's drain and fill. So if you think of a bucket, you kind of drain their ideas, and then when the bucket's empty, you start filling it up with some of your ideas. And then you drain again and fill. And for some reason, that just really kind of struck me and stuck with me. Mm-hmm. So I think that's kind of my approach a little bit.
Great.
Which is blended, right?
Yeah, which is a little bit blended. Anytime we're technically filling, it's a blended.
Right.
And there's no right or wrong either, right? So that's one of the things to say. I mean, technically, if you were submitting a recording to get credentialed by the ICF, you would do pure coaching, right? To show the competencies and modeling it. In real life, it kind of comes across a little bit different. And it's not a right or a wrong. It's what works. And do some of your own habits, though, inhibit the process, which I'll talk about I'll give an example for myself in just a moment, but who else has other thoughts?
So just a thought on, I'm sorry, Brenda, or do you want to? Okay. So just a thought on the pacing that you were talking about earlier. I found that if I am contracted with a manager for her or his or her employee, there is that expectation of hurry it up, let's get something done. If I'm contracted with that individual, even though they're in an organization, it seems like they're more willing to play along with the coaching pace, the traditional coaching pace, which tends to be slower. So that's the difference I've seen.
All right, great. And Barbara, were you about to share something?
Yes, I was going to say, I think I will find myself in situations or projects where there's a combination of coaching and training. So that, I believe, would be considered blended, correct?
Yeah. That's a blended. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Brenda, were you going to say something? No. Okay.
Jen, I find that when I'm dealing with people who are senior in an organization, I revert more to a very strict ICF way of questioning. And I think that that's because I'm in a little bit of awe of their status, in the sense that I know that they do their job in a way better than I know it, or I know their challenges. So I feel that seniority, it really is about them finding their own answers. Otherwise, it could be a little patronizing. Whereas when I'm dealing with someone more junior, I feel more confident when they ask me a question, because I feel that sometimes they're asking for a little bit of guidance. But I tend to do what Linda does as well. I've not heard of the drain and fill, but that's what I do. I enjoy that. I like that, those words together. So I guess it depends on, for me, very much on seniority, bizarrely.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because when people were talking earlier, I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking through the clients that I have, and where do I blend more and where do I stay pure more? And with the higher level, I'm actually probably a little bit more pure, which is kind of interesting, right? So I'm going to share, and then we'll go back out to the big group. But so when probably about 2013, I started really wanted to get outside of what I knew as coaching. So I knew the school that I went to, and I know the school that I trained for and all that. Like, I know how they coach. So I wanted to see how I stood up in the ranks against the ICF core competencies and hired people outside of what I knew to evaluate my coaching, which was very eye-opening, and I even cried. But besides that, one of the things I learned was I taught during my coaching. And when I would transcribe my coaching sessions to see how much I talked, it was astounding. Like it would say, coach, bam, client, bam, coach. So I was using way too many words. But what I learned through that process is that I would teach by connecting the dots for my client, right? So I'd say, so what it sounds like what you're saying is this, and therefore it's probably X, Y, and Z, and you could try A, B, and C, and many people have E, D, and F, and then I probably wouldn't even ask the question. What I've learned to do, though, if I blend, I may teach something, but I don't connect the dots for the client. So let's say I'm teaching something like giving feedback, right? Okay, so there's a theory for feedback called COIN. It's context, observation, impact, and next. So I may say something like, so when you're giving feedback, a good thing is to really put it into context. So how does that show up for you? What was, where was the situation? How did you know you were triggered by it? So I'll start coaching it as opposed to saying, 5 minutes ago, you just told me this. So what I need to do is sometimes I'll give a nugget of information, but I make that, how do you relate to this? How do you connect to this? What does this mean to you? I say this, Now what do you want to do with it? So that was a big way to help break me actually telling them what their insights should be. So I just share that because that's been a growth path for me for a while as we talk about these things. The other thing with pacing is I only do 30-minute sessions for coaching. So our pace is fast. I allow 45 minutes because they're always late, right? But the session itself is the 30 minutes. And so it goes fast, but it keeps us on track. And I agree that people want the actions that go with it. Okay, other thoughts going on for you guys?
May I ask a question on that when you're working with senior leaders and perhaps they're overwhelmed, perhaps they've been doing the job for a long time and they've got those sorts of life questions throwing themselves at them. How do you find that in a 30-minute session, Jen?
It works pretty good for me. I feel that because I'm doing less talking, it helps, right? So that's one thing. As soon as I cut down my talking, I can cut down on the time. But it really comes to, Leanne, you know this, I'm not sure, and I know some other people do. It's about how do you laser in on what is their perspective that's really stuck. And I feel that's one of my talents to be able to do that. Like what's really blocking them from figuring it out on their own. And I feel I can get to it pretty fast, quicker, I should say, than I used to be able to. And so even with senior people, it's pretty okay to do that.
Thank you.
Good.
Jen,
Go ahead.
Thank you for sharing that because it's just interesting. I just wrote some blurb for something about what coaching is and that it helps you work through your trees to see your forest, or work through your forest to see your trees, or whatever, whichever way I wrote it. But it's analogous to what you just said of, so what I hear you telling me is blah, 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 right? And so I think I'm guilty, but I also do that and have found some success with clients seeing something they hadn't seen before by helping them remove their trees.
Right.
So
Totally.
I'm going to have to ponder that a little longer, but thank you for sharing it.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is the coaching is that we do reflect back to them, but we don't necessarily reflect the aha to them. If that makes sense. We'll be a witness with it. We'll partner with them so they'll get their aha, their perspective shift, change the direction that we're going. But we don't tell them what it should be. It's a lot, less impactful. Good. Who else? Other thoughts coming up?
So I agree with everything that's said. And I make an agreement with my clients at the very beginning. If I'm going to do something other than coaching, I will inform you at the moment. Right? I will tell you I am changing hats. I'm stepping out of my coaching role and I'm going to share some experience. Or would you like me to provide you some resources? End of story. I put my coaching hat back on. Let's resume the coaching.
Perfect. So really clear boundaries of what's going on. So
Yeah.
they're clear. And what I love about that, Lenny, is it doesn't set up false expectations of what you're going to do each and every week. All right. Other thoughts?
Another coach that I work with at the beginning, Lenny, like you, he sets up the agreement that and asks, if I think I'm hearing a blind spot, do you want me to point it out to you? And so they get that agreement up front, and then he'll say, even if I'm not sure, do you want me to point it out to you? And they'll all say, yes, of course. So as the coaching progresses, he then has the ability to say, remember at the beginning when you said you wanted me to point out blind spots if I think there might be one? I'm thinking there might be one here. You want to talk about it? So he asks permission. He's already gotten the permission to bring it up. And then he can, based on his experience with that company and experience, and he's a very experienced coach as well, can point out some things that that person just might not see because they're too narrow in their problems, so to speak.
So what I hear is that a lot of it is setting up that agreement, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's designing the alliance with the person that you're coaching. So obviously we have our written agreements with the company, the corporation, even individuals, but then how are we going to be with each other? What are your expectations? What do you know about coaching? What are we going to do if we start going down the road of a different modality? Like all those kinds of things are great, which is part of the coaching process to be able to do that. Other thoughts? Okay, so another part of what we're going to talk about is also how programs come into play. So I find that I stay more towards pure coaching if it's a combination program. So if let's say I'm working with an organization, 6 months, and there's 4 live workshops on site with the team, and then there's some individual coaching that also happens. When I'm packaged that way, I tend to stay more pure coaching because we have the content of what they're learning to fall back on. So when I do the team workshops, I use coaching skills, but I do not call them team coaching because it is definitely, here's a concept, here's a theory, how does this apply to the team? It's also a lot of just facilitation that sometimes happens, even more. So those are more directive, not always. But I'll say 3/4 of the time they're directive in what we're bringing and have agreed upon as a team. And then that helps with the one-on-one coaching because then you can stay really open, or they have concepts that they're pulling from, or you started off by saying, so what from that workshop really stood out for you? And they know the concepts and then can apply them. So I have also been with team workshops where I've planned the whole thing and I walk in the room and then the leader says, so we're doing something completely different today. And so where it's like, okay, you just put your stuff, what do you need, right? And normally what happens then is I go into facilitation mode of watching the team dynamics, bringing up the questions, acting as an objective third person in the room, third party in the room for whatever their goal is. And then I may come back to the content at a different time or it just goes away. Anybody else have any thoughts about if you do some actual formal workshops and one-on-one coaching, how that affects things?
I think my experience has been the same as that, Jen, in that when I do content delivery as part of the program, it becomes a lot easier even in the group coaching piece, rather than individual coaching, even in group coaching, to keep it pure coaching because you've already had the opportunity to give the content, and then it becomes about facilitation, as you said, and coaching around the concepts that you've already shared.
Yeah. It's interesting. So Brenda is one of Karen. So Karen is my wife, and we own KickStart Your Edge, and we work together. And then we have a team of coaches, and Brenda, who's on this call, is one of our KickStart Your Edge coaches, right? So she's actually with one team that we've had is that Karen and I went in and did a workshop and then said, okay, Brenda, here's people to go coach. So we had to review a little bit with Brenda. What did we teach? What were the concepts? And she was familiar with a lot of them, but what is it that they learned so that if they brought that up, they wouldn't have to educate her. So I think that worked out pretty well, right, Brenda, to be able to do it that way because you couldn't be at the workshop live.
Yeah, it was very helpful because the program was dynamic enough that they actually incorporated the common language into their ways of articulating what they were challenged with. So it was really important for us to know what was happening in the classroom or the training room so that we could incorporate that. But it worked really well. And sometimes the coaching went a whole different direction, as coaching can do. And then sometimes it would come back to the topic of fear, which was one of the things that you were training on. So yeah, it was good.
Yeah. What else is popping up for people? Anything? No? Okay. So who else has created programs where you've done some training elements and then also had individual coaching? Or I'm going to ask the or question, or are most people just doing more one-on-one coaching? You're hired for a specific individual client contract within a gig. I know some of you are still figuring it out and sitting on fences, but.
So I'll just take a brief stab at that one. When I was coaching internally, I did both coaching and training. I'm not going to call it programs. It was very specific training on very specific areas. Since I stepped out on my own to do coaching, I haven't done them together. I've done them separately, right? I'm delivering workshops over on this side of my life and coaching on this side of my life. So there's a very distinct boundary between them.
Okay. Okay. Good. Barbara?
So I actually have a model that I'm working on, which I sort of reviewed with you, Jen, right? So my area of focus is in sales training and coaching. So I've developed a model that I want to take forward, which involves the combination of training first and then coaching. And it also incorporates, in this team environment, a train the trainer. So looking at it from like creating a test lab to train on the concepts and then coach, and then having the ability to work with the management team on helping them roll it out so that I can get out of there at some point, right? Because sometimes, you know, there's the longevity that you want within a particular client assignment, but there's also time to move on so that things that you've taught, trained, and coached on can kind of live on, and then you can come back in and check in and, you know, reevaluate how they've been doing with what you've helped them on. So that's the model that I'm working on.
I love that. So it's basically, as we sort of think of sustainability for our programs, right? And also our own interests. And we all know, do we love to stay in one place for a long time? Do we like to hop around? Do we like different clients? Do we like new challenges? Do we like things consistent for ourselves? I love that, right? So one is we can help you organization. Not only can we get you where you want to be now, but we can train your people on how to keep people there for the long haul, right? And I think that train the trainer is a great way to go in terms of some of the content and the concepts and things that are happening with it. Yeah, that's good. Who else?
I did a similar training it was a practice run for me for my husband's business because he'd had this continuous complaint that nobody was taking responsibility for their work they were doing, and then everything was just being pushed up so that he and his partners were just overloaded. And with the things that I'd been learning and speaking with clients on through my coaching, I was able to go in and work with HR because I had an invested interest in my husband's mindset. But what I was able to do was prepare a program, quite like Barbara suggested, that was about training the managers of each department to learn how to push back so that every member, down to the most junior member, had to be asked the question, first of all, when they came with a problem, what do you think? So teaching coaching skills to the managers. And it was so simple from a preparation perspective. But when I presented it to the HR department, it felt to them like it was just like an amazing shift of attitude. So I was teaching them how to acknowledge and validate, how to use empowering questions, how to try and get to the thing behind the thing, which very often is what blocks people. It's not necessarily the challenge at work that's the problem, it's the mindset they come into work with. And that's why I talk about this intersection of professional and personal, because that's what I used to see as a lawyer managing a team in a department. It wasn't really about work, it was about them. And I think it's very similar in many environment. So a similar thing to Barbara, training the managers.
Love it. Well, it's the whole thing about how you do anything is how you do everything. So technically, and depending on what your agreements say and how you set things up, for me, when I coach, even within organizations, they can talk to me about whatever they want. They can talk about their life. They can talk about work. They can talk about performance reviews. They can talk about ham. I don't care, like, what it is. But the thing is that usually they bring you work examples, which is just an example of what's really happening. And those details technically aren't that important, right? How many times did you email? Who cares, right? So it's saying I have conflict and I'm afraid of conflict. That's where that's going to show up everywhere that needs to be coached, regardless of the situation and how they bring it. So I agree. It's about, as Leanne mentioned, it's the thing behind the thing. It's the real core and the real perspective that needs to be shifted. And so it's interesting because I will have corporations say, well, you're only going to talk about work stuff, right? I'm like, no, I talk about whatever they come up with because it will affect their work. Because a mindset doesn't change once you leave a building. If you have a perspective that's blocked on how you see the world, it's going to show up no matter what the situation's going to be. So that's a good way to look at it. So yes, I love honey baked ham. I do. So one other thing I want to say is because I see that Laura is on the call with us. Hi, Laura. And I believe, Laura, you're married to Phil, right? Yeah, and so I'm going to unmute you. And Phil and Laura both do a lot of coaching with assessments. Is that correct?
Yes, we're partners with DISC and then that 5 behaviors of a cohesive team.
Right. How do you feel with I'm putting you on the spot here. How do you feel with assessments? Does that lend itself to more consulting? Or is it truly coaching, or where does it blend when you actually have an instrument and a tool that you're using?
I think it's very good to have that tool, any of those tools really first, whether you do Myers-Briggs or that. I found that I changed my whole leadership style between using a Myers-Briggs and DISC. And I just really analyzed myself. And I feel like it helps me in coaching other people to ask them questions to help them dig out some of the things. Because when we look at our personality assessments, we all have, there's some really great things it says, but there's also some really, unwelcome things to hear about yourself. And, I know I took that to heart and really thought, well, how does that, it took me a long time to figure it out on my own. If I'd had coaching years ago, it would have been great. It wouldn't have taken so long. But I really think the coaching lends itself so well with those assessments and teaching people how to use them and not just chuck it in a drawer and say, okay, well, whatever, I had to go to this meeting for work, because that's where I had taken them, is through work originally. And I just think it really helps you to ask the right questions to help them draw out and figure out and see where they can improve. So in that way, you may do a little assisting in helping them, because we don't really like looking at ourselves in negative ways sometimes, or we don't see ourselves really at how our associates, our peers see us. That's really hard sometimes, unless you're really have done a lot of soul searching and you're really worked on improving yourself. So that to me is what I found years ago to be hard, figuring out what am I supposed to do with this. They flew me out to take this assessment, but they didn't really do a good job of explaining the assessment. So I had to figure it out on my own what to do with it. But I think in terms of knowing that as a coach and how they work, it can really help you ask those key questions to help them to improve their leadership style.
Love it. Good. I know it's interesting because technically when we debrief an assessment, so no matter what the assessment is, the actual debrief, when we because I'm doing one in a moment at the top of the hour. So if I'm doing the debrief on it, that's not coaching. I'm teaching, I'm explaining, I'm showing who it is. It can't count as coaching hours. What follows from that, though,
Right.
obviously, is going to be the coaching. And part of the beautiful thing of using assessments with the coaching is a tendency is to fall back into teaching in the following sessions. Like, oh, well, you remember you're a D and a D means X, Y, and Z, as instead to say, even how did your D characteristics show up this week? What felt really good in your interactions? Where do you think maybe somebody else had a different kind of reaction to it? So it's about how do you help them learn the material through awareness and insight in their own behaviors. And that's an interesting balance to be able to do that too.
Yeah. I know, like for me, I had to really think when I read my assessment styles and saw where, oh, I can seem unfeeling because I am more of a logical thinker. Doesn't mean I'm not real sensitive inside, but I am more about the work and getting it done and making sure it's right and having to make sure, because I'm not a high I, so to speak, or I like to chit chat all day. I'm more about I want to get things done. So I had to look at myself and go, wow, maybe I'm not spending time with people. So I would mentally just pencil people in. Well, I haven't talked to her and him much lately, so let me make sure I spend time with them. And then I would just go do that and let them come up with a dialogue and help them do their work, whatever it is, because I was a retail manager, and just kind of work alongside them a little bit if they didn't really need help, whatever. But I think trying to help people realize, so what are their qualities that maybe don't let them shine so well as a leader that they really need to work on, and finding those are kind of hard, I think, for some people. But I think it does show in the end when they will find that their people will start even referring to them as a good leader, and things that they'll find the benefit eventually of really working on themselves. And I really think a coach can really help so much in getting people to help their style of leadership.
Yeah.
Improve it, should I say.
Perfect. Good. All right. Any other last minute thoughts that you guys have?
I have something I'd like to just add on to Laura's about assessments. Is I really focus on Myers-Briggs. I've done it for years, and I think it's a valuable tool. But one of the things that I share with participants of either a workshop or an individual debrief is that once they learn about the assessment and they understand who they are in relationship to other people, that there's a bit of responsibility there in that they now have to become flexible in moving out of what their preference is to be more effective when dealing with others, especially others who haven't taken the assessment. And that's then where the coaching can pick up for me. Is so you're someone who has an extroversion tendency, which means you're going to want to talk things out all the time. How will you then adjust your style when you are working with a team of people who may not have that same preference? And that's where you can begin to coach with them using the assessment, is getting them to understand that sort of that responsibility for, now that you know, you have to flex yourself. If that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah.
It really does help you learn how to speak with your peers and your associates better, I think, understanding your styles with these assessments. And I think that just is really helpful for people.
Yeah. Because so many times we make shit up, right? About what the other person's doing and why are they doing it. And it's where conflict amongst teams can come from. So once you really get clued into why people and why human behavior operates the way it does through the assessment, I think it does help people then to overcome some of their challenges or understand their need for flexibility and being more agile when learning something new. So.
All right. Anybody else? Okay, so here's what I think that we could do. So I think this was a good discussion to sort of think about different things, and it also helps to, obviously, when you have a session, reflect on it. Did I like the amount of coaching I did? Where did I go to some of my default tendencies? You know, am I not focused enough on action for this organization? Like all these different things that we kind of thought about, to find our own style, what we're comfortable with, so we can articulate it when we're negotiating with our clients on this is what I bring to the table. This is my blend of coaching. This is how I do assessments, or I don't, or I do a little bit of consulting. There's some teaching and training, so that you position it so that you're meeting the expectations with the clients. So I'm going to put a post up in our Facebook group, and I'm going to start doing a list of what are all the different topics that we would want to talk about if we were to meet once a month. And maybe one could be about how do you work on giving feedback, right? Or how do you price programs? Or I don't care if they're, I like them more about the leadership and the coaching part a lot more than like how do I find clients. But if we do a blend of how do we build business and how do we be the best leadership coaches we can be, I think that would be great. And let's just brainstorm all the different possible topics. And we can start to maybe like get in a regular routine of once a month getting together and talking about them. I know I have a few calls coming up that I just kind of threw together. But if we sort of map it out, I think that would be great. So if you guys could really contribute to what you want more of, then it would make it fun for all of us. Sound good? Okay. So I just love to see. I just like people to talk to. and if we can talk about coaching, I like it even more, right? So I'm the world's biggest coaching geek, and I could talk about this stuff all day long. So thank you guys for showing up on a Tuesday and making this happen. And I'll put the recording in the group. We'll start the list, and we can start really honing in together to be a team of just amazing, like-minded people who want to change the world. Sound good? All right. All right, you guys, I'm going to call it a wrap then. I got to go do my little debrief. Okay. Bye.
Bye.